The last message my father ever typed was on the old typewriter he left me. They're watching through the words. Today, it started typing on its own. The rain fell on London in a perpetual dreary drizzle, a fitting curtain for the end of Arthur Pembleton's career. After 40 years as a quiet, unassuming archivist at the venerable Penworth & Sons auction house, he was being ushered into retirement with a small pension and a lukewarm handshake. His final task was to process one last acquisition, a collection of effects from the estate of one Alistair Finch, a reclusive clockmaker known for his eccentricities. The collection was a jumble of tools, half-finished mechanisms, and ledgers filled with frantic, spidery script. And nestled within it all, in a velvet-lined compartment of a traveling chest, was the briefcase. It was a beautiful thing, crafted from aged, nut-brown leather worn soft with time. The brass fittings, though tarnished, were of exceptional quality, and the single lock was a complex mechanism that looked more like a tiny bank vault than a simple clasp. It was utterly, completely silent. When Arthur picked it up, it didn't creak. When he set it down, it made no sound. When he shook it gently, nothing rattled inside. It was as if all sound within its confines had been extinguished. A small typewritten note was tucked under the handle. "This case is the sum of my life's work. Its contents are beyond value. Do not attempt to open it. The mechanism is not a lock. It is a safeguard. To force it is to invite profound regret. It must be delivered, unopened, to a Miss Eliza Gray of 17B Whistler's Lane, Chelsea, before the week is out. A. Finch." Arthur felt a prickle of curiosity, the old familiar thrill of a historical puzzle. But he was a man of rules. He logged the briefcase, noted the instruction, and placed it on the outgoing trolley. His job was done. The next morning, his last, he arrived to find the briefcase still there. The delivery driver, a new man, had seen the strange address and the vague instructions, and deciding it was low priority, had left it. A wave of unexpected possessiveness washed over Arthur. This was his last find. He couldn't let it be lost to bureaucratic laziness. "I'll handle it," he told the floor manager, his voice firmer than it had been in years. He placed the silent briefcase on his desk. It seemed to absorb the office noise around it, creating a small island of quiet. The address, 17B Whistler's Lane, proved to be a fiction. It didn't exist. A call to the solicitor handling Finch's estate revealed the man had no living relatives. The instruction, it seemed, was a dead end. The briefcase sat on Arthur's kitchen table that evening, a silent, brooding guest. Its presence was unnerving. His small flat, usually filled with the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the tick of his carriage clock, felt preternaturally quiet. The briefcase was a void. "Do not attempt to open it." The warning echoed in his mind. What could be inside? Priceless gold coins? Jewels? The secret designs of a master clockmaker? The silence it emitted started to feel less like a quality and more like a secret, a temptation. For 2 days, he resisted. He researched Alistair Finch. He was a genius, a ghost, a man who had patented several revolutionary, almost magical silencing mechanisms for high-end timepieces. He had vanished from public life decades ago, becoming a figure of rumor. Some said he had gone mad, obsessed with the concept of perfect silence. On the 3rd day, his resolute broke. The briefcase was his last connection to a life of purpose. He had to know. Taking a set of fine tools from his own modest collection, he began to examine the lock. It was a masterpiece of miniaturization. Gears, levers, and springs were visible through a small crystal window in the brass face, all motionless. There was no keyhole. Instead, there were three small numbered dials, like a combination lock, but with far more digits. It was a puzzle. Weeks passed. Arthur's retirement, which he had feared would be an empty descent into boredom, became an obsession. The briefcase was his constant companion. He spent his days in the library studying mechanical engineering texts. His nights were spent at the kitchen table, sketching diagrams, trying to reverse engineer the mechanism's secret. He learned that Alistair Finch wasn't just a clockmaker. He was a theorist of acoustics. He had written papers on the nature of sound as a physical, almost tangible force, something that could be isolated, captured, and contained. The briefcase, Arthur began to believe, was not just silent. It was containing something. The first incident happened on a Tuesday. He'd been applying gentle pressure to the main plate with a thin metal pick, trying to sense a weakness. A tiny gear within the window twitched, and from the briefcase came a sound. It wasn't loud. It was a faint, distant, and utterly horrifying scream. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror, cut short the moment the gear slipped back into place. The silence that rushed back in was deafening. Arthur recoiled, his heart hammering against his ribs. He stared at the briefcase, now radiating a malevolent energy. He told himself it was the wind, a trick of the pipes, his imagination fueled by exhaustion. But he knew. He had heard it. The briefcase held a sound, a captured scream. His obsession deepened, curdling into something darker. He neglected everything, his health, his friends, the outside world. The flat became a tomb dedicated to the silent box on the table. He was no longer trying to open it out of curiosity. He was trying to open it to prove to himself that he hadn't gone mad, that the sound was real. He managed to decode the combination. It wasn't a random number. It was a date, the day Alistair Finch had withdrawn from the world. With trembling hands, Arthur dialed in the numbers. 1 9 7 4 0 6 1 5. There was a soft, deep thunk from within the case. The brass latch lifted. The briefcase was unlocked. He sat there for a long time, his hand hovering over the lid. The silence was now a held breath, a poised threat. He thought of the scream. What else was in there? What had Finch meant by profound regret? He opened it. There was no jewel, no gold, no stack of papers. The interior was lined with a strange, dark, felt-like material that seemed to absorb the light. And nestled in custom-fitted molds were 6 objects, each more bizarre than the last. A small, silver tuning fork that vibrated constantly, yet made no sound. A glass vial stoppered with cork, containing what looked like a swirl of gray smoke. A child's porcelain doll with its eyes scratched out. A worn leather-bound journal. A photograph of a smiling woman, Eliza Gray perhaps, with the face torn out. And a device that looked like a stethoscope, but with a complex brass resonator instead of a diaphragm. Arthur picked up the journal. Finch's writing was a frantic scrawl, the record of a mind unraveling. June 15th, 1974. Breakthrough. Sound is not energy merely dissipated. It is an entity, an echo of the soul's vibration. It can be isolated, captured, and contained. August 22nd. The theory is correct, but the application is, oh, terrible. I have successfully isolated and contained the sound of Margaret's last breath. The silence in the house is now louder than her laughter ever was. Arthur's blood ran cold.
Margaret Finch was the clockmaker's wife. She had died young of a sudden illness. He read on, his horror growing. Alistair Finch hadn't just captured random sounds. He had captured the most profound, traumatic audio moments of his own life. The slam of the door when his only son left home never to return. The final, gasping breath of his beloved wife. The sound of his own sob recorded in a moment of bottomless grief. He had trapped them in these objects, trying to silence the pain of his existence, only to discover that by containing them, he had given them a terrible power. The briefcase was a prison, a silent, soundproof prison for the echoes of his greatest tragedies. The final entry was written in a shaking hand,